Today, the Atlantis episode. Welcome to my channel. I am a research compiler. I make videos about topics I'm interested in. I put together information from old and new to inspire future research. Today, we're going to be talking about Atlantis and the ancient civilization that has been recorded. So, I'm a big fan of the antediluvian period, which would be pre-flood or cataclysm period, and post-Pleistocene period, which would be the Ice Age. There are very little historical accounts in this time frame. However, it is after Neanderthal, at the start of Homo sapien, to about 3,000 to 4,000 BC, where our first accounts of any history in human activity take place. Except for this story, which takes place 9,000 BC. The only account of Atlantis in history is in a book called the Timaeus and Critias by Plato in 360 BC. It is a play that is relaying information to the public because they didn't have television back then. The play is starring Socrates, who is proposing his idealistic constitution to a group of council members. Now, during this description of laws, Socrates is interrupted by Hermocrates, who says he has heard of an ancient civilization that has incorporated a similar constitution. And if Socrates would like to hear this tale from his friend Critias. Socrates agrees, and Critias goes on to tell his tale that has been passed down to him from his father of a man named Solon of Sais, who speaks to a priest in Egypt, asking of the history of Greece. The elder Egyptian priest goes on to say, "Solon, O Solon, Greece has no histories of old, for your libraries have been burned and your cities washed away. But your country had a big role in both of our nations' histories 9,000 years ago." And it goes as follows. So I'm going to read this part verbatim as it's the most important of the story. "Many great and wonderful deeds are recorded of your state in our histories, but one of them exceeds all the rest in greatness and valor. For these histories tell of a mighty power which unprovoked made an expedition against the whole of Europe and Asia, and to which your city put an end. This power came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean, for in those days the Atlantic was navigable, and there was an island situated in front of the pillars of Heracles. The island was greater than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way to other islands, and from these you might pass to the whole opposite continent, which surrounded the true ocean. For this sea, which is within the Straits of Heracles, is only a harbor in comparison, having a narrow entrance, but that other is a real sea, and the surrounding land may be most certainly called a boundless continent. But afterwards there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune all of your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared in the depths of the sea. For which reason the sea in those parts is impassable and impregnable, because there is a shoal of mud in the way, and this was caused by the subsidence of the island. The tale, which of great length began as follows. I have before remarked in speaking of the allotments of the gods, that they distribute the whole earth into portions differing in extent, and made for themselves temples and instituted sacrifices. And Poseidon, receiving for his lot the island of Atlantis, begat children by a mortal woman, and settled them in a part of the island which I will describe. Looking towards the sea, but in the center of the whole island, there was a plain which is said to have been the fairest of all plains, and very fertile. Near the plain again, there is also the center of the island, at a distance of about 50 stadia. There was a mountain not very high on any side. In this mountain there dwelt one of the earth-born primeval men of that country, whose name was Evenor, and he had a wife named Leucippe, and they had an only daughter who was called Cleito. The maiden had already reached womanhood when her father and mother had died. Poseidon fell in love with her and had children with her. And breaking the ground, enclosed in the hill which she dwelt all around, making alternate zones of sea and land, larger and smaller, encircling one another, there were 2 of land and 3 of water, which he turned as with a lathe, each having its circumference equidistant every way from the center. It seems from there his children had armies and reigned Atlantis until the judgment of Zeus, the god of gods, decided he did not like what his children were doing, trying to take over everything and be greedy as humans would. So it is said that Zeus would punish these men, and to punish them in hopes that they would make a change. So as their punishment, Zeus would, and the story then cuts out. It does seem like maybe the rest is just up to interpretation and the play ends right there. We don't really know. But we do know what happened to Atlantis. It was no longer. It's no longer part of the continents. Whether it was subject to flood or sinking, like they think, one thing really stands out at the time, and it's said twice, that at the time the sea was navigable, and now it's not. And this was a play for the public. So for them to widely accept that you can't go west, but they know there's a vast, endless land beyond that ocean, is a big key point. And I think it truly was a mud swamp that they couldn't get through. Now, it might seem unlikely that an entire continent would sink underwater, but there is a very good explanation for this. Floods are very prevalent because the earth is very smooth. I'm going to show you a demonstration. Now, if there was an earthquake and the tectonic plates moved just slightly, your whole middle ground between those plates might sink, I don't know, maybe 1%, right? That makes sense. 1%, that's it. Here's the Earth. It's 8,000 miles in diameter. From the highest point on Earth, it's 5.5 miles, and to the lowest point in the Mariana Trench, it is 7.5 miles down. That is a surface difference of 12.5 miles. 12.5 divided by 8,000 times 100 gives you 0.15% surface change. So as a giant, if I were to move my hand across the surface of the Earth, it would be as smooth as glass. It has a surface change of 0.15%, meaning if anything hits this a thumbtack, there will be a disturbance in this watery globe. A 0.1% wave would be over 5 miles high. Hundreds of millions of gallons and weight of water crushing everything clean. We have reports of that through the ancient history, and it seems the Earth may cleanse itself every about 5 to 10,000 years. Now, the last one we have a count of is right at about 10,000 years. Is that right? All right, so it looks like we should probably get to Mars pretty quick, right? I think Plato's writings are also an air of caution for their civilization. Don't get too confident in your civilization, or the gods will take it away. Always be grateful for what you have, or it's gonna get wiped clean. That's kind of one moral of the story. Here we have what I call a sub-zero map, or a map that would be accurate in 360 BC, which is the time of the accounts of Atlantis. Now you can see here we've got Libya as Africa, and we have Troy, Hellas, Rome, and Egypt. And you can see Egypt where the stories of Solon would have been told to the Hellas. Now we go west and we see the Pillars of Heracles, which still stand. And we can see very easily where Plato tells us of Atlantis, which would be between the America continent as we know it now and the Pillars of Heracles. So it's very feasible that that island could have sunk. Now the water levels could have also risen. We were in the Pleistocene era of the Ice Age, and we're just coming out of it. So the water levels are still rising. We are coming out of an Ice Age. Lastly, we know ancient civilizations were traumatized by floods. Egyptians clearly built the pyramids to preserve their legacy. That is why they are so large and heavy. Their ancients got wiped out, and they had a fear of it happening to them. We have stories of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Spoiler, it ends in a flood. We have stories of Noah starting a new civilization. But these are all 3000 BC stories that are about a flood. And now we have a story of Socrates and Plato, very reputable characters in our history. It is pre-Rome and post-Egypt, talking about Atlantis. And it's a very cool subject. We've explained how it's very likely and what the story is, what happened to it, and where it is, right? Now, it is 2023, and our technology just isn't up to searching the depths of the Atlantic. We still have stories from 1875 of Captain Nemo and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, speculating of deep ocean exploration. But that's still a fantasy. We don't do that yet. It's still dangerous, as we've seen, to get on a submarine. So, I hope this story has inspired you. It is as real as history gets. It is truly the oldest tale, besides Homer's Odyssey, of course. Now, I hope in my lifetime I get to figure out exactly what Atlantis looks like. That's all I have for you today. And until next time, peace.